Welcome back to No Sleep Teal, the show dedicated to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Reier alongside Evan Reier. Evan, it is the last Thursday of May. We are rolling towards the start of training camp, another football season upon us. We've got some topics we're going to get into today on the program. We'll talk a little bit about OTAs as they continue on for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll also get into an update for the 2023 draft class. That's right. Year two guys for the Jags. Where are they now? Where are they headed? Are they still around? Some of those guys. That was a big class, Evan, in terms of numbers. We'll also talk about, is a certain Jacksonville defender underrated, overrated, rated at all? We'll get into some of that with Evan as well. We're going to do some power rankings too, Ev, for these opponents' uniforms. We talk so much about the Jags uniforms, but we'll get your power ranking as well for the opponents for the 2024 season. So no shortage of topics, Ev.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you can find when seemingly the news cycle is a little dead. But no, I like what we've got in front of us, and especially when you talk about breaking down these second year guys, a lot of dudes who need to have a big 2024.
Yeah, big class. Got some guys that need to take a big step. And so, what we'll start with, no news is good news, I guess, relatively speaking,
Yeah,
Evan. When you think about OTAs, those continued on in Jacksonville this week for the Jaguars. We talked about it before. Typically, if there is news coming, it's because a player isn't there for a reason other than sort of an excuse type situation. It could be injury related. So as long as it's not newsy, it's probably a good thing.
yeah, exactly. You just don't want to see injuries. You don't want to see your players getting arrested or anything like that. Shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm.
It continues to pour there. Yeah, no, I mean, and really what you're seeing from, what Press Taylor has been saying and Doug Peterson has been saying, it's been, very chill. They're very positive about what's going on. But, of course, there's not really I don't know how much like hard criticism or analysis you can really do at this point of the year.
Yeah, and we talk about news. Of course, we're not talking about off the field and with former players, Brandon McManus.
Yeah,
And that
well,
situation, oof, as
pending
it moves forward.
litigation.
Yeah, I need to hear more on that. Need to see more and
Yeah,
hear more on that situation. That's the type of stuff, though, that Evan is sort of alluding to this time of year that you don't like to see come across the old timeline. So, again, we did
nope.
hear from Doug this week. We did hear from Press Taylor this week. We've heard all the right things because it is late May. And that's typically when you're going to hear all the right things. Everybody's undefeated. Trevor Lawrence becoming more of a vocal leader. I think on all fronts with the Jaguars organization, every department you could speak to would say that needs to happen at this point in his
Yeah,
career. If he's truly the guy, and especially if he's a guy that you're about to pour into significantly from a financial perspective, this is the time. And look, that's understanding too, Ev. Not all quarterbacks have to be rah rah Kirk Cousins or outwardly
right.
emotional type guys, but it has to be clearly known within that inner sanctum that that guy is the guy when it comes to leading a football team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can go look at it, basically throughout the history of the NFL, the history of football. It's not always like you said. It's not a case of, oh, well, I'm the loudest guy on the team, so that makes me a leader, and that's why we win games. But even guys that are relatively reserved on a minute to minute basis, somebody like Tom Brady. Tom Brady popped off all the time. He was when the moment called for it, he was absolutely going to try and rile dudes up, all that stuff. Peyton Manning did that. Patrick Mahomes does it. Patrick Mahomes might be, one of the, a lot of people like to joke about him being soft or him being whatever, but if you look on the sideline, he's getting in people's ears. He's doing the whole thing. So, I do think that is a something that we need to see from Trevor. I think, that was kind of even the thing in the first year was out the gate. It was just like, okay, I get it. You're a rookie, but you can kind of get in there. You can whatever. So, want to see more of that. Love to see that. But at the end of the day, he can be as long as he's throwing touchdowns. not throwing picks. It's however he likes to do it. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, the accountability's been there from Trevor. I mean, when he
Yeah,
is really made big mistakes, he's owned them and quickly,
absolutely.
without being asked about them. And that's certainly part of being a leader. Cleaning those things up is what you really want to see. You like that he takes accountability for those situations, but it is a point in his career where those things have to be minimalized. But absolutely, you look at guys like Dak Prescott. You look at guys elsewhere around the league that maybe aren't that type of personality. That's kind of where I see Trevor. I think Trevor's got it in him. But again, most important isn't what even you or I see. It's what the guys in that room see on a day-to-day basis. So let's shift gears, Evan. Let's get into that 2023 NFL draft class for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, big class, man. I guess because of some
Yeah,
trades and some things that had happened prior to that draft. I've got 13 players that the
yeah.
Jaguars
They
selected.
traded back like 2 or 3 times and picked up just a ton of picks. Like it was insane.
Yeah, and then just compared to nine, just nine this time. But what we'll do is we'll start in round 7. We'll work our way to round 1. And so just in round 7 alone, a year ago, the Jags with 3 picks, an offensive lineman in Cooper Hodges, a defensive tackle in Raymond Bohasic, and a fullback candidate in Derek Parrish from the University of Houston. Parrish actually was a practice squad guy last season before being released in
Yeah,
2023, October of 2023. I think he's now in the CFL. Bohasic was waived at the end of camp or late in camp a year ago as a 7th-round pick. And then Cooper Hodges, the offensive line, the local product,
yeah.
Cooper Hodges from Appalachian State, knee injury, missed the entire 2023 season. So that's your 3 7th-rounders right there.
Yeah, Hodges is, really the only guy in that group that you kind of thought, okay, maybe he can have a, long-term future with the team, and they were very. If you go back and look at what the team was saying about him before he got injured, they were very complimentary about maybe him being able to step in or be kind of a versatile backup. He's the injury was obviously extremely unfortunate and kind of robbed him of his chance. But he does have this off season to kind of impart that on the Jaguar staff again. That he can be a useful tool.
Yeah, you look guard to guard right now, though, and they look pretty well set, don't they? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
when you talk about Cleveland signing his new deal, Ezra Cleveland, and you bring in Mitch Morse as a center, you got Fortner now as a backup candidate at center, maybe guard, Scherf, you got Shatley. That's a lot of guys there on those interior spots.
no, for sure. It's really Hodges is going to be trying to make his case over maybe like a Cole Van Lanen. And if something kind of crazy happens with Shatley or Fortner, not that I think either of them are going to miss the team, but maybe a practice squad spot for Cooper this year.
Yeah, and perhaps I think he was a tackle in college. Maybe you think about him as a guy that can swing between a couple of 3 spots. That helps him make his
Yeah,
case. But those are the type of things, especially coming off a tough injury, that he's going to have to show here into the training camp and beyond. So we look at the 6th round, 3 more picks in round 6, and we'll start with Eric Hallett, second, a safety from Pitt, practice squad guy in 2023, Evan. Looks like he'll be a part
yep,
of that mix on the back end of the defense in training camp. Christian Braswell, another defensive back, a corner from Rutgers in the 6th round a year ago, made the 53 man, went on IR in October of last season. And of course, Parker Washington at the wide receiver position out of Penn State, played in 9 games, had all those injuries at wide receiver. He spent some time on IR himself, had 16 catches for 132 yards. Problematically, he lost a couple of fumbles. And so I think
yeah.
1 or 2 of those both may have been pretty memorable from that perspective. But the 6 rounders, Evan, still around as we move into the summer months.
Yeah, Braswell when he made the 53 man last year, it was a bit surprising. That was one that people kind of didn't anticipate. Parker Washington had really impressed, and there was kind of the thought that he was a steal anyways. Like that was a guy that a lot of people thought might go in round 4 or 5, and instead he fell to the Jags in the 6th. Um, Parker Washington obviously gave us the most to talk about because when he did step in for Christian Kirk after Christian Kirk got injured, there was some initial optimism. He actually in that game against the Bengals, he scored a touchdown, caught 6 of 6 passes for like 60 yards. It was one of those where you're like, okay, nice. This is what we want to see. But then the ensuing like he also had a fumble that game and then fumbled the next week after that, and the hype kind of cooled down a little bit. But he's still a guy that when you did see him last year, you can see this guy can be useful. Now the Jags should if they have to utilize him as much as they did last year, unfortunately that means that Christian Kirk got injured again or some other issues are going on. But I like Parker Washington. I like having a guy like that at your 5 or 6 spot. Braswell, there's not as much to say. Didn't get on the field a ton, but again, it's never a bad thing if a rookie is able to make his way onto the 53-man roster. We'll see how he fully recovers from that IR stint that he had starting in October.
Yeah, you look at the comings and goings in that secondary for the Jags in this offseason, obviously, in free agency, they were pretty active there. And then hitting the secondary again with Jarian Jones in the draft a couple months ago. So
Yeah.
Braswell, Hallett, you think about special teams too. That's an area where those positions typically are providing options to the kick game and the kick return game as coverage and return unit guys. So those are the type of avenues I think you're looking at for those kind of guys to stick around for another season. And I think you hit on it with Washington too, because even though the Jags brought in a couple of guys via free agency and Gabe Davis, and then again in the draft and Brian Thomas Jr., Washington is a guy that you think probably works more inside anyway. And so
Yeah.
perhaps that's a positive sign anyway. No guarantees, I don't think, for Parker Washington either, but you can at least see a path for him, maybe even in the return game, even though they did spend the pick on Keelan Robinson there in the
And got
2024
Devin
draft.
Duvernay.
And Duvernay.
Uh,
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think Washington is kind of going to be the backup to Duvernay in that sense, and but I do think if I kind of if I had to bet on it, I think Washington will actually end up with more receptions on the offense than like Duvernay will. I think they'll utilize him a little bit more. But I will say there are some other guys that were. These guys like Seth Williams and Joshua Cephas, these guys are impressing apparently right now. So who knows, man? The
Yeah.
making a 53-man roster year to year is so difficult that it's crazy how things can switch up fast.
And things happen between now and the end of August. You have camp injuries,
Yeah,
you have situations that are unforeseen. And so you really want to kind of stay away from too much in the way, too strong a takes when it comes to
yeah,
definitive sort of projections. But as we move through this list of 2023 draft picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we're about to enter a run of defensive guys. And I think it's interesting when we talk about this group because you've had a change on the defensive side with Ryan Nielsen coming in, and it's not going to be the same kind of defense or conceptually what we saw previous to Ryan Nielsen. So we'll start in round 5 from a year ago with Antonio Johnson. I really like that pick and the point of that draft because he was such a wild card. But when you talk about measurables, athleticism, weren't quite sure how he would fit positionally in the NFL. I know he was more of a nickel at Texas A&M, but that's a different beast once you get to the NFL, but did some positive things a year ago, 17 tackles, 2 interceptions. Um, and then you also add, of course, Savage and Jones and some other guys via the offseason movement. And Yasser Abdullah, also in the 5th round, the edge from Louisville, had a concussion in camp a year ago. He was largely inactive during the 2023 season. And those were your 2 5th-round picks.
yeah. I think the way that even though the Jaguars have had some turnover inside the secondary, I think the way that they've kind of been talking about it and the different moves that they made is that it has kind of signaled that Antonio Johnson is, according to the current plan, the starting strong safety for the Jags, which I think is a good thing. I think he was impressive last year. You know, I love that he's got a kind of a knack for the big play. Not only did he have the two interceptions, he also added a forced fumble. He dropped three total passes defended, which isn't a ton when you have two interceptions. That's two of your three passes defended are interceptions. So it's not like
Means
he's
you're
necessarily
efficient.
swatting balls.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna, if you're,
When you
if
do make
it's
plays on the ball, you secure it pretty well, I guess. Yeah.
which, and I mean, ask, guy defensive or coaches like Dan Quinn. He's now with the Commanders. Dan Quinn was happy to let Trayvon Diggs get torched if Trayvon Diggs could go get 9 interceptions. He was like, yeah, that's fine. Feast or famine. Johnson's exciting in that sense. Abdullah, we didn't really see him much last year. He's got maybe a little bit more space available with Caleb on leaving, but Travis Gibson comes in, so it's going to be interesting to see where he kind of ends up and what he does. It seems like though he might have an uphill battle to make this roster.
Yeah, you look at his size, and he seems more of a fit for a 3-4 type of approach, or the
Right.
concepts that come with 3-4 than a 4 down approach on a consistent basis. I'm with you. You said it. Caleb Vaughn moves on to Carolina, but then you bring in a veteran outside linebacker who has experience in the system in Travis Gibson. So you wonder a little bit about Abdullah on that front. Also, we talk about the defensive side of the football. In round four, two more picks from a year ago. Tyler Lacey, a defensive end from Oklahoma State, saw action in 15 games as a rookie, 12 tackles, a pass deflection. And then also earlier in round four, you had Ventrell Miller, the linebacker from Florida. Unfortunately for Miller, he had the Achilles injury. That was after a pretty star-crossed career in Gainesville from a health perspective. When he was well, he was hell for the Gators. It was
Yeah.
just, unfortunately for him, a continuation last year of what he experienced at the college level. And you think about that linebacker position as it sits right now. And there was an acquisition made via the sort of free agency market here in the last few weeks. But talk about those two guys on the defensive side for the Jags in year two.
Miller's exciting, and it seems like the both Peterson and Nielsen have said, it's exciting to have that guy coming back, ready to be healthy. Achilles is such a brutal, injury in terms of recovery. It takes a long, long time, and sometimes guys don't come back the same. So there's a big question mark there. But when, like you said, when you go look at the tape of him playing at Florida, it is exciting stuff. And that's the kind of dude that it's not like the linebacker group. While Alilakun's leading the way, and Devin Lloyd is also starting to look better. Muma hasn't really made a huge impact. There's not a whole, there's not really a third or fourth guy in that group that you're like, well, there is no way he's, losing his spot or whatever. So Miller could absolutely make a big jump. He does have to compete with Ty Summers as well, who's being brought in. But at the end of the day, it's still a moment of optimism. I would say for Miller, and with Tyler Lacey, he was able to get on the field in some in 2023, but with the arrival of Eric Armstead, and then they go for two defensive linemen in this year's draft at pretty early spots in Mason Smith and Jordan Jefferson. He definitely is. It's a crowded room on the DL right now.
Yeah, I think with Lacey, even the question with him coming out of Oklahoma State had more to do with could he really provide legitimate pass rush? He's got nice
Right.
size. He's a guy that can hang in on early downs and against the run, and there's value there from that perspective. But at the end of the day, in this league, you have to be able to get after the quarterback. And you outlined the additions that were made just in terms of the notable additions with what the Jags bring back. And so we'll see with Tyler Lacey. I'm with you on Ventrell Miller. If he can just stay healthy, I think the opportunity is still there for him. I think Summers is maybe more of a guy that if he sticks, it's probably going to be special teams related.
Right.
You just hope for Ventrell Miller he gets an opportunity again to stay on the field and show you some of the things you saw over extended stretches in the SEC. Let's get into round 3. Tank Bigsby. It's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about Tank Bigsby, it seems like, in the
Yeah.
last few weeks? I mean, you need that next guy in behind Etienne. Um, and I was a Bigsby fan at the college level. I thought at Auburn he was a really good back, really productive back. There were a few things I saw that maybe signaled a little bit of a red flag. And the problem with that is I think I'm hearing that still. You know, when I hear Peterson or I hear Jaguar folks talk about Tank's got to become a little more aware, he's got to be, you know, a little bit more instinctive. Well, I don't know how much of that stuff you can really coach up. Now, he was a rookie.
Right.
Rookies are going to do rookie things. I think there is a certain level he can still achieve in terms of pressing the hole, knowing when to be patient, knowing when to be assertive, those type of things. Just awareness in general. I mean, at Auburn, I saw him in an Iron Bowl that the Tigers had won at Jordan-Hare Stadium go out of bounds and stop the clock. You know, and that allowed Alabama to go down the field, tie the game, send it to overtime in large part, and win. So those are the kind of things I worry about. But inconsistency, I think that probably sums up what he needs to clean up, Beth.
Yeah, there was definitely some bad luck involved last year too. There were some points, I think especially in that like first 8 games, he had like 2 fumbles and that was rough. And then also his like 2 drops that he had last year like bounced off of him for interceptions.
Yeah.
And so when that's that happens, and that's why you don't drop the ball. But also, it's pretty unlucky when both drops, just happen to fall into the defender's hands. So I think there is a lot to like about Bixby. I think he does provide a different skill set than ETN. And is definitely more dynamic than someone like Duranish Johnson. Bigsby's not slow, but he is a little more physical. I want to believe in him. I want him to be the guy, but it is going to kind of be. I think there's no issue with him making the roster or anything like that. But I do think that in terms of the favor of Jaguars fans, earning the favor of Jaguars fans, he has got a lot of work to do. I think people are kind of over him. I mean, really, the Jaguars, even if you go start looking at the snap counts too, I mean, there were large stretches last year where Ernest Johnson was basically the backup at that point. So it's going to be interesting. It's definitely a prove it year for Bigsby.
Yeah, I think so. You talk about step forward guys that we're talking about today. I think Tank Bigsby's right there at the top of the list in terms of the
Yeah.
opportunity that's in front of him to be a really nice compliment to Etienne with his style and his ability to get it done really between the tackles. But this is definitely a proving ground situation for the second year back out of Auburn. Round 2, the Jags took a tight end and Brenton Strange out of Penn State. Now, you can talk about Evan Ingram, tight end, but we know how he's going to be used in ways that aren't typically associated with the traditional
Right.
tight end. So, regardless, though, with Strange, you need more from a guy that you valued as
Yeah.
sort of a top 60 pick a year ago. He's got to be at least a true hand in the ground guy who can also move across the formation, do some different things. Luke Farrell, obviously, in that mix as well. But I guess Strange is kind of in that same neighborhood as Bigsby.
Yeah, I would say 100%. I think I don't really I don't know how you can look at it any other way after a rookie season where they kind of made it known. They're like, oh yeah, no, Evan Ingram's absolutely still going to lead the way. He's still the primary tight end pass catcher. Don't anticipate Brenton Strange really cutting into his numbers that much, but for a guy that you take in the second round, I don't. I mean, I really don't care how good of a blocker he is as a tight end. Like, I mean, he has to provide some form of dynamicism, and there is reason to think that he can do that. I mean, there's a lot of good tape while he was at Penn State, but at the same time, it was mostly as this kind of red zone threat. He wasn't a high volume guy. He just was really, really good at catching the ball in the end zone. So let's do that. If that is what he's supposed to do, I want to see a lot of red zone targets for Britton Strange in year two. Otherwise, I don't really know why you took him in the second round. So
And I'm with you. I get that if you want to go with some 12 personnel with two tight ends on the field and you want to have Strange out there with Ingram and maybe you can do some things with that look to get even better matchups for Evan in the passing game. Strange is still going to have to give you more regardless.
yeah, no
Run
matter what.
game as a target, it just has to be more in year two. And with that first round selection from a year ago, Anton Harrison, the big offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I love this guy, Evan. I think they've got their fixture starter, perhaps right there on the right side. Gives me some Leon Searcy vibes from back in the day. Yeah, there were some ups and downs, which you kind of anticipate from a rookie, but I'll say this, I never got the sense that Harrison was just totally out of his league, like he was just swimming. He had his minuses, there's no doubt, but to be able to invest all those reps into him a year ago, this is when that should really start to show up in year two.
No, absolutely. And yeah, it was a situation where there was no world in which Anton Harrison was going to just dominate, but for him to not just get lit up is also just critical, because think about what happened with Walker Little and his chances as a rookie. It was like, yeah, this guy is an exciting prospect, but man, every time he's on the field it looks like he's getting worked. Anton Harrison at least held his own. And, in certain cases, like when you're playing the Texans twice here, and they've got Will Anderson and different guys, that's tough. The Colts have a defensive line, that is very, very strong. It's not like Anton Harrison's getting an easy route by being in the AFC South or with the Jaguars division winning schedule that they had last year. They had to play the 49ers. They had to play some really good defensive lines. And, it was the kind of challenge that a guy like that needs. And ideally, like you said, year two, he's just going to be able to take those lessons, and we, can either see him take a big step up, or at the very least, just solidify himself as a, reliable starting tackle.
Really, when you talk about the cornerstone piece for this entire offensive line for the next 10 years, this is the guy, because you look at
Yeah.
the contract situations with a couple of the other tackles, including Cam Robinson here in the not too distant future, the age that you have at those interior spots, that's a pretty big concern at certainly one of the guard spots and at center. Harrison is your guy. I mean, that's your staple,
Yeah.
you're hoping, for the next decade or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You let Jawan Taylor walk, so I mean, and then you draft this guy. That was your. I mean, that is you made that known when you operated the offseason like that, and it's an encouraging start in terms of when you talk about a guy being reliable for a decade, because dude played 1,100 snaps in 2023, did not miss a game, basically started every snap. Only hopped off for special occasions, and even did a little special teams as well. So a lot of experience in that opening year. And then not to mention too, something I just noticed here is he only had 2 holding calls on him all last year. That's not bad. You take that.
No. It kind
If
of
he
kind of
if he can,
reminded me of Cam's rookie year, you know.
yeah,
And then unfortunately Cam had the injury.
right,
That's what you hope steers clear of Anton Harrison. But yeah,
can't
this
have
is
it
a very bright future uh, for the big offensive tackle.
for sure.
Hey, I know you had some interest in this topic. Tell us a little bit about Andre Cisco, the Jaguar safety, and I guess the NFL coming out with a list of the most underrated players in the NFL. And apparently, uh, from the Jaguars' perspective, Cisco was the pick.
Yeah, Cisco is the guy that is named for the Jags, and really the NFL.com article, it lists a player from every team, but their kind of case for Cisco is that he's not he's a Jesse Bates the third like, which Jesse Bates is a great safety. He's a lot of fun to watch, but brings a similar skill set as kind of almost a center fielder kind of guy with ball hawking instincts. It's funny because really up until 2022, Cisco wasn't considered a ball hawk. In fact, like in a lot of ways, we were kind of like, I don't know if he has that in him,
Mhm.
And after that rookie season, it was more like, well, this guy hits really hard, but how is his skills, when the pass is in the air, and then 2022, he really turned things around with 10 passes defended in the season with 3 picks, and then of course he had 4 picks last year. Um, I it's an interesting question, to say is he underrated or overrated. I think amongst Jaguars fans, he's perfectly rated. I think Jaguars fans are, like they like Andre Cisco a lot, but they also know that he's, they know his flaws. They know that he's not exactly the best at hitting a receiver or running back where they're at. He makes a lot of tackles, but he doesn't necessarily. It's not as aggressive as a guy who hits hard as you would like. But at the same time, that right now he's got 7 interceptions over the past 2 years. That's great. I think on a national level, sure. Andre Cisco is not very well known. Mostly because the fact of the matter is that the Jaguars don't exactly permeate, a lot of the NFL's
Not a lot
markets.
of
It's
Monday
kind
night
of
games,
yes, yeah. So that's what whenever I see an article like this, that's I think the grain of salt you have to take with it
Not a
is
lot of
yeah,
Jim Nance games and Tony Romo games.
not a lot of people watching the Jaguars. Not a lot of
Yeah,
people who can tell you,
correct.
more than 4 players on the Jaguars roster.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think it all goes back to within the fan base and outside the fan base. And let's be honest, a lot of times from a national perspective, when these lists are formulated, sometimes it's as simple as let's look at stats, right? And like you said, the
Yeah,
guy's picked off 7 passes the last 2 seasons. Why aren't we hearing more about him? Well, put him on the underrated list. I feel the same way. I don't feel like he's overrated or underrated. I feel like he's been solid. I feel like there's still more there with him. I think the ceiling is still got some room that he can grow and become an even better and more consistent player. I want to see him. I know it's tough. I mean, we look at these safeties in the middle of the field against one-on-one situations and say, you got to make that tackle, right?
yeah,
But you got to make that, but you got to make that tackle at the end of the day.
yeah.
So, just more consistency from Cisco, I think would be welcomed for sure. Hey, Evan, a little bit of a fun topic before we get out of here. I want power rankings for the opponent uniforms on the Jaguars 2024 schedule. And what we'll do is we'll just sort of go through the schedule, get some quick thoughts, and then at the end, I need a top three. I've got my top three uniforms. I want your top three. We'll list them from 3 to 1, and we'll get the schedule started with Miami. And that's going to be a sweltering hot game down in South Florida. I totally anticipate the Dolphins in their all whites as a result. The Jags, I would think, will be in teal tops for that one. I don't think they want to roll out the black on that
No,
day.
I think that's inhumane. I think that might be like a Geneva Convention violation or something. I'm not sure.
For the Dolphins, for me, it's all about if they go old school versus their more modern look. If they
Yeah,
go with sort of those Dolphin dynasty, Bob Greasy, Larry Zonka, as I date myself here, those old school aqua jerseys or that old school just look in general, for me, that one's pretty hard to beat when it comes to a top three.
yeah. I think that's my take too. I do love their modern whites. I think they always look really
Clean.
good with the white with the just a little bit of orange and teal trim. I think that's a good look. But yeah, when they go for that darker kind of teal, and the orange is darker too. It's not so fluorescent. It's a little more muted. It's just a classy look. If you're gonna, orange and blue is not something that, as an Alabama grad, I'm not
Well,
a
this is
huge fan of.
aqua.
But
Aqua. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, aqua is specific. Yes, yes. But no, definitely, it's those retro teals. It's those retro teals all day, every day of the week.
So you're the Jags. You come home the next week. You got the Browns in Jacksonville. If you're the Jags, do you go whites? with
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Heat, and you make the Browns wear the brown, right? Or
Yes,
orange or
yes,
whatever.
absolutely.
If you're the
Yeah, no,
Jags, that's what you gotta do, isn't it?
no, I mean, up until really even that October
Something
6th game
Tom
against
Coughlin
Indianapolis.
started too, yeah, back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like even up until that October 6th game against Indianapolis, I would be wearing white at any
September.
place that's out. Yes, yeah. I mean, they don't have to worry about it so much in Buffalo and Houston, but
Yeah,
yeah, against Cleveland and Indianapolis, that is a white jersey game, no questions asked. And I like the Jaguars whites. That's cool.
yeah.
When it comes to the Browns, definitely prefer their brown jersey than the orange.
I like just the straight whites on the Browns. When the Browns are in
Yeah,
just straight white jerseys and pants, even the orange helmet is okay. It's so classic, it's so traditional. But absolutely, I would think Jags in the whites for that one here in Duval. And then you go on the road for a couple games. You said it, Texans, shouldn't be a issue because that's inside. I would think Houston would wear the home blues perhaps when it
yeah,
comes to jerseys. Same for the Bills because you're in Orchard Park. They're in week 3. Shouldn't be a hot game up in upper New York State, but the Bills to me, even though they're a traditional team going back to the AFL, those are just pretty standard uniforms. Even their
yeah,
retros, it's classic red, white, and blue, but their retros don't blow me away. Their new ones, I don't not like them, but they're just whatever. The
yeah.
Texans with me, I
The New
like them.
jerseys are
I like them for new generation teams, newer teams. I think the Texans look a hell of a lot better than the Titans, which we'll get to here in a minute. But what about the Bills and the Texans for you?
so. I love when the Bills wear their red alternate jerseys. The Patriots have a similar thing too, where they have these red jerseys that they break out every now and again. Uh, um, that is a game where they might break those out. Monday Night Football, I mean, I know they're at home, but I could still see that happening. And then, with the Texans, I did not mind their jerseys coming into. I didn't mind the previous iteration. I think these look like XFL jerseys. I mean, they
Really?
just don't. I just don't like them at all. The red numbers on the jersey is a really really weird look, and even their white with the navy trim is a there's just something about it that feels like I don't know what the word is, but edgy. Like it's trying to be cool. It's really trying to be cool, but they just don't look cool at all to me. Their new battle reds are like they're like neon red. I don't know. It's not for me. I think maybe this is maybe a hot take, but I think the Texans might be the worst looking team that the Jags play this
Wow.
season.
I like this
Yeah.
dislike you're already cooking up, for the Texans, the hated
Oh yeah.
Texans, the
Absolutely.
defending AFC South, because I can appreciate that. I think
No crazy.
there's gonna need to be more of that over the next 10 years or so, probably from the Jags perspective. Colts at home, you said it earlier. That's early October. Perhaps the Jags are in teal or black jerseys, which I kind of hope for because the Colts and those traditional whites, again, icy with the white helmet. I think that's a
Yeah.
really good look. It's not a top 3 for me, the Colts, even in the all whites, but it's up there for me. And then I guess London too. Get your thoughts on this one with the Bears. The Jags are the visiting team in that first London game, right?
Yeah.
So I
So
would
I
think the
think
Bears
well,
will be in the black jerseys or the dark jerseys, and
yeah.
Jags in a road white look.
Yeah, I think that's sounds about right. And I do love I love the Bears like dark blue navy jerseys as well as
I
their white
always say
jerseys.
black, but it's
Uh
navy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's just about as dark of a blue as you can get. And then yeah, the Colts all whites are a really classic look. I actually do like the Colts blue jerseys too. It's just such a classic, that kind of electric blue, that royal blue that they wear is really nice. So yeah, I would say that makes sense. Jags will probably go teal at home, and that's going to be the second home game of the year and the last one for another 3 weeks basically. So I think they'll probably go teal against the Colts. Let Indy wear the whites, and then probably the reverse where the Jags will wear white against Chicago. I don't have the Colts or Chicago's jerseys getting in my top three.
They're not top three
Really,
for me either. Yeah.
I think through the first 6 games, the only real top three team is the one we're agreeing on, which is the Miami Retros.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
really, that's kind of it for me right now.
Jags also get the Patriots in London in that second game as the home team. The Patriots, to me, it's a shame that the dynasty happened in the uniform era that it did, because I just think the Patriots
Looks
newer
like crap.
uniforms they're awful. I dislike them more than you dislike the Texans look.
Yeah,
Now, if you want to put the Pats in those old school red jerseys with the white helmets and white pants, I'm here for it. With the Patriots snapping the ball on the side of the helmet, I'll
yeah, that's
that's
a
top
great,
5
great
for
look.
me. That's top 5, threatening, maybe top 3, but this look, this dynasty era look is oof. It's not much for me.
It's definitely feeling it quickly outdated. It felt weird in the 2000s, and then now when you're still seeing it, you're just like, man, this is a it's a weird look. But no, when they wear those red retros, they look great. I mean, that, like I was saying with the Bills, I don't know what it is about teams that are red, white, and blue, but when they wear like the red with the white and blue trim, that looks great to me. And then after that, after the London trip ends, you come back to Jacksonville to play Green Bay. Um, and talk about just a classic look. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the most iconic looks in sports is that dark green with the yellow trim. I love the green jersey. I think they look good in white too. But when I think about the Green Bay Packers, I think about Brett Favre in that green jersey. That's literally where my head goes every time. So
What else needs to be said? The retro uniform is the uniform. Kind of like,
yeah,
Alabama in college football, or Penn State or
exactly.
Michigan, when they say, "Well, we're going to get our retro." Well, they wear them every week, but that angry G on the helmet, that is iconic.
Yeah,
I think Georgia uh, actually took that from the Green Bay Packers. If you notice, Georgia and Green Bay have that angry
yeah,
G. And I'm with you. It's probably one of the few cases where I like the dark home jersey better than I like the white. But the Packers and
yeah.
the green and the yellow uh, pants, it's iconic, and it's certainly a top 3, I think, probably for both of us. Here's another one who have screwed it up: the Eagles of late. For me, anyway.
Yeah,
I'm just not a big fan of the current look. Now, if you want to go back to Randall Cunningham and Reggie White and those guys, maybe in the late 80s into the
Kelly
90s,
Green.
oh man, with the real eagle wings on the side of the helmet,
Yeah,
I can do that all day long. But what they're kicking right now with the little eagles at the top, it doesn't
yeah.
do
I
it for me.
think
Yeah,
I think the Kelly Green throwbacks are, I think that's
with the
a
silver
top five jersey in
pants.
NFL history. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that is one of the best looks. I don't mind, they wear that kind of like it's still technically like a shade of green, but it's so dark it looks like black jerseys. I actually like those for the Eagles. But that's pretty much their only fit right now that I enjoy.
yeah.
Other like their whites are kind of boring, and then also the modern green is just it's doesn't do anything for me. But that is a game where again Sunday night football in Philadelphia. Who knows? We might get the Kelly Green. The Jags might get to Kelly Green in that one. You never know. That seems like the type of situation though that they could pull out something like that. So definitely something to watch. And then following that, the Jags come back to Jacksonville and they play the Minnesota Vikings, which you know I would say just lukewarm on the Vikings jerseys. I don't really hate them. I don't really love them. I like purple as a color, and I think they have a nice shade of purple. But overall, I mean, they just don't do much for me. But I don't hate them.
I think older with the Vikings is better, but when it comes to the Vikings' newer look, I think it's still a lot better than what New England and Philadelphia have done
Yeah,
as
yeah,
traditional clubs in the NFL with their look. So, Yeah, I'm probably right there with you. Pretty in the middle where the Vikings threads these days are concerned. How about the Lions on the road there in mid-November? Kind of the same way as I am with the Vikings. The newer look is okay. I'm not a fan of the
Yeah,
slender font for the numbers. I don't really
yeah,
like that. Um, I really like the classic look for the Lions that really brings out the Honolulu blue and the silver, probably more along the lines of Barry Sanders. And you hear me talk as an old fart, and what it goes back to a lot of times, I think for a lot of us, is our formative years as NFL fans. Are It's always better, right? When we first were introduced to a lot of this stuff, regardless of the topic.
yeah. And they're getting a new uniforms this year as well, and they look solid. They went for a blockier number, compared to that kind of thin thing that we were just talking about. I think that's a good thing, but
Nice.
They're extremely simple. They are very very basic jerseys. They kind of feel like how when the Jags, changed jerseys most recently. They went for a thing that kind of felt like they didn't like they forgot to add some stuff to the design or whatever. Um, but they look solid. They're introducing a black jersey that looks pretty rough. Um, it looks like when I think the only team I've ever seen in college athletics get away with like that blue and black is Duke. Like Duke basketball gets away with it, but when Duke football does it, it doesn't look very good. And when UNC also introduces black, I don't think I'm a blue and black color guy. I don't
No.
think that's really my thing. So yeah, it's kind of like what you said. It's just fine. It's not offensive, but it's also not selling me a jersey. Um, and so after the Lions, we have the Texans, which we've already kind of I heard he dressed down. I heard he kind of made my take on that.
Now
No.
I'm going to bring the big stick to the next team.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Tennessee Titans.
We're awful. I think that's the worst
Yeah,
uniforms
they're
in the.
rough.
I mean,
Yeah,
you think
when
about
they're
it.
not when the
You
when
went
they're not wearing
from
the Oilers.
Yeah, when after they became the Titans, you went from those fire uniforms that you still try to roll out, because it's the far better look, and
Everybody
you're going to
wants it.
sell a lot
Yeah,
of those jerseys, which is the premise, of course. So you said it earlier. I think the Titans look like a UFL team these days. I mean, it
yeah,
looks like the Tennessee state flag out there, and the Navy helmets are atrocious. When they'd go with the Navy
yeah,
helmets, those are way worse than the white, in my opinion. The Titans are awful. What an awful look, and they've never gotten it
yeah.
right.
The sword on the like shoulder is really dumb too. I've never liked that. I think in general they're just rough, and I don't know if the Titans have ever looked really especially great. Like even in like the McNair era and different stuff like that. When I go back and look at those, they're pro looking jerseys for sure, but I still don't like the look. I still don't think they look very good. Um, when they would wear like the white and light blue kind of combo, that was pretty solid. But their dark blue and gray additions to their stuff is just always
Yeah.
really tough to look at, in my opinion.
It's like it doesn't
Um,
match, and
yeah,
they're
it doesn't.
colors that should work, but they figured
Yeah,
out a way to make it look like they don't. So props
it's
to whoever
it's
pulled off that
yeah, good
debacle.
job, guys. And then now another team with new jerseys, the New York Jets got new jerseys this year, um, which they are pretty much the same jersey they were already wearing, just with a couple minor
Which was
changes.
kind of
They're
their
oh,
'80s jersey in the look,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't like they've introduced like a big collar on this one. Like it's got a big thick collar of color change around the neck. Not a huge fan of that. I like the stripes on the side though. I think that's a really classy look. And then the helmet looks pretty much identical to the helmet they were already wearing.
Which is
So not a
'80s.
whole lot of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fine. I think the Jets are, again, inoffensive. I definitely don't think that they're anywhere
Right.
close to the top of the list, though.
I like when they break out the Joe Willie Namath era, old school,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
with that
absolutely.
Kelly green jersey and white pants and that white helmet. Yeah, give me the retros for the Jets. The '80s now. when Richard Todd was playing quarterback, they had the New York Sack Exchange. They called their defensive line up there.
It's a
Um,
great name.
that those looked good in the '80s, but I don't like them as much uh, in the 2020s now. So we'll see what the Jets have in store. The Raiders up next. And what else do you need to say? Kind of like the Packers for me, Evan. And give Mark Davis this much. He isn't messing around with the old man's classic look. I think Mark knows that if he screws with those uniforms, Al Davis, the ghost of Al
So
Davis,
Val Davis,
I think it already haunts Mark probably as it is. But you screw with those uniforms, be like
and
Beetlejuice
it's
coming
over.
back,
No, you occasionally will see like people on NFL Twitter be like, here's like a concept of like a Raiders jersey with a black helmet, and then it's just 1,000 comments saying, "Shut up! Like stop! Like don't do this! Like nobody wants this." No, I mean it is just a great look, and I actually like their kind of color rush uniforms that they still break out. That all white look
Mm-hmm.
is pretty solid with the silver helmet. If you're gonna do something different, I think that all white look is a good way to get around it. But I love them. I think the Raiders are at they look their best with the black jersey, the silver pants, the silver helmet. That's just an iconic look. You can't beat it.
Yeah,
And
and
I think that, oh, go ahead.
Jags close out with Titans again. Terrible. Colts.
Terrible.
Uh,
Solid.
Colts are classic. I can get into the Colts as a top 5 candidate, but it's time to give our top 3 as we wrap this
Yeah.
up. The 3 spot, Evan, who you got there?
I think in my 3 spot, I am going to go with the Bills. Actually,
Hmm.
I really do like their. I know that the main jerseys aren't super impressive, but I love that red alternate, and I think in general, it's no one else is doing the red, white, and blue look as kind of traditional and classic as the Bills are. So that's where I got them.
I got the Dolphins third, which going into
Okay.
this, I probably would have thought I'd have the Dolphins 1 or 2. Um, but I think it's that type of season for the Jags where opponents' uniforms are concerned. I think it's strong. I think it's a strong uniform games season for the Jags from that perspective. I got the Dolphins in the 3 spot. What about number 2, Ev?
Number 2 is going to be the Raiders. I mean, really, I don't have to say a whole lot more. We were just gushing about it, but yeah, I just love that look. It's timeless, and yeah, I'm excited to make the trip to Vegas to watch that game. I'm just kidding. I don't have my flight yet, but we'll see.
2 spot, I got the Packers. That classic
Okay.
traditional look. And that, we could have done this based on the uniforms we think the team will wear against the Jags. So I'm anticipating the Packers in whites probably in Jacksonville, white jerseys, which we both agree we like the green jerseys better. But just if you could pick the uniform for the team, I'd go with the Packers and those green jerseys in the 2 spot. And that leaves us with the number 1 spot. We might have the same team. I'm not sure.
No, I'm actually picking a team you've already selected. I'm going to say Miami is my number 1
Okay.
spot, and with
Okay.
the retros kind of pushing them over the top because I really do like their modern look, but the retro jersey, the possibility of that is that's just I don't know. I can't think of a jersey I like the look of more than that retro teal. So, or that retro aqua, excuse me.
Yeah, I
Um,
had it mixed up.
so yeah,
I do have the Raiders in the number 1 spot. That's my Luda
yeah,
pick.
So we had I had the Bills and you had the Packers, but other than that, we both agree on the Raiders. We and the Dolphins. We just have them in different spots.
Yeah, yeah, we just had them flipped pretty much in some spots, and Bills would have been up there for me too as a top 5 contender. But there you go, top 3 power ranking for Jaguar opponent uniforms in the 2024 season. Where else are you going to get that kind of content, right, Evan? I mean,
Only here,
seriously,
only here.
the important
That's
stuff.
we're the no one else is talking about it. Nobody else wants to talk about it, but we're not afraid. We're ready to
When it's a
take on
topic here in the next
the big
month,
talk.
we can go to the old as we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Previously,
Oh,
as
that's so
per
good.
my last email. Yeah, no, awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. Enjoyed it. We covered some ground between OTAs, between updating 2023 draft picks, some Andre Cisco talk, and of course, the opponent uniform power rankings. Evan, look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
For Evan Reier, Travis Reier, thanking you for joining us right here on No Sleep Till. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Hit the subscribe button. Hit a like for us if you don't mind. We'd appreciate that as well. Turn on the notifications. You'll get this show every time it drops. So, for Evan, Travis, thanks again. Until next time, so long, everybody.